Your paper, the second part says strategy to end war and poverty.
Right.
And one point that you make there is that it can come into being only as a result of a global democratic transformation.
Mm-hmm.
I wanna, if you could explain to me a little better what is global, because global could have many different meanings.
Exactly.
So global in regards to what?
What I mean is there needs to be movements in many of the countries of the world, maybe not everyone, but in at least most of them, over time, to get their governments to redirect spending in the military to social needs and protecting the environment.
Yeah, I was inferring that global would mean rather the definition of the democratic strategy, rather than geographical global, because I think that we have power over our local area, our municipality.
Exactly.
We can make a change here because you can vote. You can vote for a councillor. You can vote for an MLA, for an MP.
Exactly.
But we cannot vote for things that happen in Argentina.
Right.
Right. So they can look at what we're doing, but we cannot make a change globally. We have to start locally.
Right, and what I stress is that the nation state, Canada, is the focus, is the level where people should organize. So what we do is, because the federal government sets the budget, how much can be spent on the military, how much to human resources, what level of taxation, all of those are federal priorities. So I argue that we need a cross-Canada alliance, a very loose alliance, all focusing primarily on the federal government, saying this is what we want in the next election, and we will support parties who will prioritize human need over militarism.
Sure. So that's the transformation and the definition of a democratic. When you talk of democratic transformation, and you say global democratic transformation, to me it means more the understanding of democracy.
That too, that's critical. And that's where Canadians could set an example. I mean, first of all, there's some countries where if you speak out, you can end up in jail or worse. So there's some countries where this is not possible. Yeah. But Canada could set an example for countries, whether they're democratic or not, by showing a citizens movement which really did make a difference. And my hope is that when you get situations where there's two countries that, say, traditionally have been hostile, for example, India and Pakistan, or Greece and Turkey, if social political movements there can, for example, reduce the military budget by 5% in one country, that encourages the social movements in the other country to say, look, we don't have to worry. They're lowering their military spending. We can do at least the same and build up momentum for peace.
But we start locally.
Exactly. You start locally.
Because that's the only place where we really have influence.
Right.
We can make a real change locally. And then if it's a good idea, it might grow globally.
Yeah.
Okay, another word that I have difficulties understanding is inclusive democracy.
Right.
And I understand as a direct democracy.
Exactly.
And I think later on in your paper you explained that, but you used the inclusive a couple of times, and I wonder if you would compare this polling system as an inclusive democracy because you're allowing people to come and register their opinion.
Yes, this is an example of the kind of technique that would be used in an inclusive democracy. The term comes from Takis Fotopoulos, and what he argues is that democracy must be expanded from the political realm, where it's very limited for a number of reasons, to include economic democracy, social democracy, in terms of just any organization, any group of people. They should be run as democratically, as fairly, and as participatorily, directly as possible. And in our relationship with nature, we have to treat nature with respect as well. So it's inclusive because it includes every aspect of life. And democracy as an antidote to domination and pathology.
All right. So inclusive means direct democracy.
Exactly. As much as possible, because obviously there's some limitations.
You're not limited to enter your opinion on nowpolling.ca.
Exactly.
We put topics there, and you can add your own answer and vote for your own answer. And as long as you register, you have that option. So it's direct democracy in the sense.
It couldn't be more inclusive than that.
Yeah, and if enough people accept it, then politicians will have to accept it too.
Right, because they know that their job is on the line.
Right. So it all needs is masses of people to come and vote on nowpolling.ca or something similar to it. I'm
Right.
not saying that this is the only salvation,
Yeah.
but I'm saying this is an example of direct democracy.
They can even go to the Globe and Mail poll that they do every day and vote on that.
That's
I mean,
right.
there's many choices, and the more you get involved,
Yeah.
the more you think about the issues, the more
Sure.
impact you'll have.
Now, the Globe and Mail has a yes, no, maybe
Right.
answer.
Yeah.
Here, we're not giving you the answer. We're saying put in your own answer and vote for it. So this, to me, is a lot more advanced
It
than the
is.
Globe and Mail.
Yeah.
And it's a local thing, and it's a non-profit. So we're
Unlike
not,
the Globe and Mail.
That's right. It's a non-partisan,
Right.
a non-profit. Anyway, another point that you have there is minority can wield power over the majority only if the majority lets them. And does it mean that we are stupid here in Canada because we're electing the wrong governments, or the governments are not doing what the majority of people say?
The government.
So why is it happening?
It's not that people are stupid. People are misinformed. They accept very often the status quo as inevitable and so on. And that allows governments and corporations to get away with making most of the decisions. That, again, people have a feeling that governments don't listen, and there's a lot of truth to that. So again, the feeling is why bother? But if you look, there were so many things that governments have done that people did not want. The majority of Canadians, excuse me, did not want to sign up for NAFTA or the free trade agreement before that. Mulroney went ahead anyway. 90% of Canadians did not want the GST, and Mulroney said, "To hell with you." Canadians do not approve overall of being in Afghanistan in a combat role. Harper is saying, "Screw you," and we let them get away with it.
Because we elect them.
We elect them, although Harper did not even come close to getting majority. But that gets into some of the quirks of the electoral system. But
Right.
but even if they're elected, if people were to make it enough of an issue, like the environmental movement has done after many years, even Harper has to pretend like he cares about the environment. He's a disaster.
So, yeah.
But it certainly makes it an issue that the other parties can run on and maybe be a little bit greener than Harper.
On nowpolling.ca, you vote for a candidate, and if you want to change your vote, you go and change your vote. And the system allows you to take your vote away from the first candidate.
If you made a mistake.
You did a mistake. Next week you don't like that person, you
right.
can change your vote. The motto of this nowpolling.ca is you can change your vote when you change your mind.
Makes sense.
And that to me is very ongoing, perpetual type of democracy, because what we have right now is you give me a vote for 4 years, 3-4 years, and after that you can't make any more decisions.
Yeah.
And there we have Mr. Emerson saying,
There you go.
"Hey, you give me the vote, thank you very much. Now I'm going to change the tune here." And there's nothing that we can do legally because we have abdicated our right to make any more decisions when we put the ballot in the box. With nowpolling.ca, if it ever becomes official through a government, similar system to this, then people can go and say, "We voted for Mulroney, but in fact the opposition got split between the Liberals and the NDPs, and therefore I'm going to change my vote because in this riding my priority is to oppose free trade, therefore I change my vote." And you could change, and therefore Mulroney would have fallen within a week.
Exactly.
Because people could have gone back and changed their vote strategically to defeat Mulroney. But we were not able to do that, and that's what I start thinking of nowpolling.ca, 1988.
And just the ability to recall politicians like that will keep them more honest, because they know they can't sit there for 4 years and do whatever they want. And again, that ability to recall people and keep them responsible is essential in any kind of democratic system.
Okay, you're saying then that at the moment, not necessarily people get the government that they deserve, as somebody said, but rather that we're hooked with an electoral system that is not flexible enough to make changes on time.
That's a big part of it.
That we give this term of office that we call, and that is actually the Achilles heel of our democracy, because we're basically given a blank chair, they call
Check.
it? Blank check. Blanche card.
Oh, carte blanche.
Carte blanche,
Right.
blank check, the same thing.
Yeah.
And saying, now you go and do whatever you want. And then we protest. but that's all we can do.
And wait 4 years and maybe throw them out.
Yeah, well, we forget it for years. What was
they count on that.
Protest. Most people do that.
Yeah.
And would you consider then the term of office being a hegemonic idea? It has been implanted in our brain, in our society. Hegemony is that we give our vote and that's the end of our participation.
Yeah, for 4 years.
We accept that, and nobody wants to argue that because that's been all along.
Because we think that's democracy, and that's about as much democracy as anybody would want. Now, again, whether that is democratic or not can be debated, but if you don't even know that it's a question, if it's just a given, then you won't even think to say, well, is this the best system?
But is that hegemony?
Yeah, that would be hegemony.
So we have a perfect example of hegemony today in our
people don't even
democracy.
think to question the system. Exactly.
We just go and vote, and we don't question what exactly is that I'm doing when I vote.
Yeah, what are the implications?
Yeah, am I giving up all my rights
Yeah.
to one person, and do I have any chance of retrieving my vote? We don't question that, so that's hegemony.
Exactly.
And that's one of the problems that we have in our present democracy. Okay, another point. Movement needs to combine their strategies to reduce military spending. Why is it a problem?
Okay, well, Canada is spending this year something like $18 billion on the military, and the Conservatives want to increase it every year.
Up to 30 billion.
Yeah, exactly. And number one, it's being used to keep the war in Afghanistan going, to keep the American president happy, that sort of thing. So I don't think it's the money's being spent well. But it's also a question of priorities. We have a lot of poverty here. Child poverty is something like 18% across the country. I mean, I can give you a list of all the, we need investments in public transportation to deal with global warming, and healthcare, and so on and so on. So not having an infinite amount of wealth, we have to make decisions as what is most important. The majority of Canadians and the majority of Canadian social organizations would prefer that the money go to healthcare, to the environment. The government, very undemocratically, says, screw you, we're going to spend it on the military. So my basic argument is that separated, if every group is focusing only on their particular demands, as valid as they are, we don't have much of an impact on the federal government. But if we could some way, without giving up our individual autonomy and goals, some way speak with one voice that we want a reduction in military spending to fund all of these various initiatives, that would give us the potential of having some real impact in Ottawa.
Can we record that one voice on nowpolling.ca?
Can we record?
Record?
Oh.
We can record that decision
Yes.
on nowpolling.ca. Why don't
Yes.
Why don't you go into your account? Why don't you go into your account? If you go to federal polls
And military.
and then you
And
look
budget.
for military, and then you look for budget. Now you can scroll down and see if there's other answers there that somebody has already put there. But if you don't like any of those answers, you can type your own at the bottom. I don't know if you see
Yes,
a box.
add new choice.
Add your new choice. But if you like one of them, just click on the circle, and that means
Okay.
you're registering your vote for that
There we
idea.
go. And it just boosted up the percentage now to 80%.
All right. Now,
That's great.
would you recommend people to do this, to go and register an opinion there?
Absolutely. It may not change the system overnight, but it's a step in the right direction.
That's right. You mentioned that in your paper that we're not going to do it overnight. It's going to take a while. But I think that the idea of not just screaming in the corner and then being forgotten, this is something that keeps your registration, keeps tabs on who is for and who is against. And if enough people, a significant number of people here in Vancouver, decide to give their opinions, then the politicians will have to look at it and act accordingly.
Hopefully.
Right? Yeah. So that's something that we wanted to check with you. Now, as governments internationally reduce military spending, tensions will also be reduced. My question to your statement there, this is as governments reduce spending,
Right.
tensions will be. Can Canada do it unilaterally?
We can unilaterally cut our military budget. That probably won't make any difference in any other state's behavior right away because we're not threatening anybody. But we can set an example. Besides taking care of the needs of Canadians, besides, for example, taking military aid as being sent to repressive governments, we could take that away and either use it here or use it for humanitarian visions and so on. But we can set an example. We can share ideas with other people. We can inspire other people. They can inspire us. So, and we can set a standard. We can set a standard that other people can look at, say, the United States, and say, well, look, the Canadians are doing this. Why can't you do that in the U.S.? Or why can't you do that in Britain? Or why can't you do that in China? And encourage people to hold their governments to account as much as possible.
Right. But we have power only with our vote here.
Right.
So we would have to start locally in Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
With our own vote.
Yeah, and all we could really do is set an example and share ideas. Every other country, the population there has to do whatever they can do.
And hope that internationally all the nations are going to reduce their budgets.
Exactly.
But we cannot really decide for them.
No.
So we have to focus on our local government. And one last point here.
Okay.
Reduce military aid to other countries.
Right.
You say reduce military aid to other countries. And my question is, why not cut military aid to other countries?
Well, that would be the ultimate goal. But in the same sense, if I'm saying reduce our military budget, in Canada, it's not realistic to expect it's going to happen overnight. So if you can start doing that, both nationally in terms of foreign military aid, again, you encourage other countries and other people to say, well, look, number one, Canada's doing this. Number two, there's less repression going on in somewhere in, say, Pakistan or wherever, because Canada's not supporting it.
That's it. Gradually.
It probably would have to be gradual.
Yeah. So the idea is to gradually do it, but the ultimate goal is to cut it, not just to reduce.
Absolutely. When you get rid of the idea, when the people of the world get rid of the idea of war as being legitimate, then there won't be any need or any justification for military aid. Absolutely. But it will take a few days, probably.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Peter.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Well, yeah.
Thank you very much, Faye.